You cannot cut ties because of your political differences, rather. Pero if it comes to a point where you're willing to continue believing in something that steps on the rights of other people, that
Mm-mm.
causes, that espouses the violence that's committed against them, that's no longer just a political belief.
Mm-mm.
That's a moral compass. I'm not
Mm-mm.
willing to overlook that anymore. Ganun.
Hello to everyone all over the world. Magkakasama na naman tayo sa panibagong kwentuhan this Saturday evening here at Ganito Kasi Yan, an online show or podcast wherein we tackle about anything and everything under the sun. Featuring Jacob Maquiling, and every week we'll be featuring a guest wherein we talk about anything political or social or anything relevant to our society. And today we will be joined by an amazing artist, and an amazing writer. Yun, joining us is a freelance writer and multimedia artist and a member of the Concerned Artists of the Philippines. She holds a creative writing degree from the Ateneo de Manila University and a Loyola School awardee for the arts and theater. Her works have been published in various literary and commercial publications and staged in playwriting festivals such as the 13th Virgin Lab Fest and the 2020 Women International Playwright Readathon. Offstage, she wishes to pursue excellence in storytelling through theater for development and advocacy projects. Let us all welcome Miss Sabrina Basilio. Hello, Chirby. Hello, Miss
Yay!
Bina. Welcome to the
Hello,
show.
hello. Oh my gosh. Okay, thank you for having me. Thank you for
OMG.
all the listeners tuning in from all over the world. Sabi mo nga, maraming salamat for joining us
Mm-mm.
tonight. Thank you for
Ling-
having me.
Lingid po sa kaalaman ng marami. Oh my gosh, that was so deep. Miss Bina was my teacher in senior high. She taught media literacy, right, Miss Bina? Yeah.
Media and
And
information.
I kind of enjoyed her subject. Her subject was one of my favorites, and our final project noon was one of the first videos that I've done. And wherein we talked about cyberbullying. So talagang
Mm.
yung passion ko for this, yung mga speaking in vlogs or mga video making, talagang it was deeply rooted from that project ni Miss Tina.
I am honored to have spurred this content from you. Wow, maraming salamat. Um, wow, exciting. Tapos,
Mm-mm.
no, actually, I remember receiving that video and going through it, di ba, to grade it. Sobrang, I remember wishing that you would continue doing this because it really looked like you enjoyed, and parang that's the attraction to videos like this when the person speaking actually looks like they're enjoying what they're doing. So, let us enjoy this episode.
Yes.
Kahit na madugo yung pag-uusapan natin.
So, after Jassam's Miss Tina, what have you been up to naman?
After Jasm's. Well, I went freelancing
Mm-mm.
after because I thought I would be pursuing grad school and then I put it aside muna. So now, when I'm not busy complaining about the government and wondering like when can we all resume being normal dreamers without
Mm-mm.
anger,
True.
busy ako sa maraming iba-ibang bagay
Mm-mm.
using iba-ibang hats. So I am like you mentioned, I'm a freelancer, multimedia artist. So apart from writing and acting every now and then, I do different communication arts strategies for various purposes. So, kasama dyan ang corporate, kasama dyan ang educational, and kasama ang developmental, for socio-economic
Mm-mm.
development. So, I'm a part of several non-government organizations, and we cater to women's rights, children's rights, and peasant rights as well. So, genuine agrarian reform. I'm helping out as a writer to communicate what they want, diba? So that's mostly what I do. And I'm also co hosting a podcast with a scientist, si
Mm-mm.
Jason Tanliwag. And it's called 20 Somethings. It's on Spotify, it's on Anchor.fm, and it's on Google Podcasts. And we talk about the confounding but also rewarding experience of being a 20-something-year-old Filipino creative in this dark era of
Mm-mm.
our lives. Ayun, that's what I've been doing.
So yon, Cherbina, I wanted to ask you also. During the quarantine ba, have you been more active in social media or voicing out your opinions on the government or social issues or kung ano mga relevant and pressing issues
Mm-hmm.
that there are?
Yes, 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 yes to all the questions. um, do you use screen time? iOS ka ba?
Oh, yes,
Like your
yes.
iPhone.
Oo.
Yeah, di ba may screen time
Yeah,
feature? So you
mm-mm.
can monitor the amount of time that you spend online. So I set it up. And then, since the start of the lockdown, parang the amount of time that I spent online increased by like 40%.
Mm-mm.
So, malaki yun, malaki yun. I mean, I try to tone it down every now and then, but it's hard because where else do you exist just in a
Yeah,
room
oo.
and online?
Mm.
It's your only window to the outside world. So, yes, I
Mm.
understand the 40%. It's forgivable. So, for
Mm.
everybody else out there na guilty, na online lang ang
Mm.
kanilang buhay, ganun talaga.
Yeah, ang hirap din kasi we're being deprived of social interaction. It's the only form of social interaction that we have with people,
Mm-hmm.
right? Na parang
Mm-hmm.
we don't get to meet our friends, we don't get to talk with our classmates or our peers. So parang yun na lang yung interaction na pwede nating makuha. So parang
Mm-hmm.
if we deprive ourselves of that, ano pa? Ano pang meron sa atin? Ano na lang may iwan sa atin?
Depression.
Mm. So,
Sadness.
since we've talked about being vocal online or being more active, parang have you noticed ba na parang since we're more active in social media na parang we have more time to voice out our opinions or parang more
Yeah.
people we have seen what their opinions are.
Oh, mama. Yeah. Masarap to pag-usapan.
Mm.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
Actually,
go
no,
on.
gusto ko din ikwento. At the start of the quarantine, 'di ba, ang daming parang there were issues, there were like parang mga news about mga people na nag-rally kasi hindi sila
Mm-hmm.
nakakuha ng ayuda. And I kept I kasi I'm not naman posting like my own posts. I share posts that I believe in and I agree with. And
Mm-hmm.
then there are mga people na I didn't realize na, oh my gosh, mga ano
Ano yung oh my
sila,
gosh? Qualify.
kabila.
Ano na na?
Mga taga-kabila sila.
Taga-kabila. Are we not gonna name them for what they are? I
Yes,
mean, proud
kasi
naman sila kung anong
oo,
tawag sa kanila, di
proud
ba?
naman sila. Gosh.
You do
Tapos
use this.
parang tapos parang they keep parang silencing people who keep
Mm-hmm.
sharing posts
And
that they don't
intimidating
agree
them.
with. Yeah. So have
May
you
experience ka nun na may nag-comment sa'yo,
Yeah,
nag-intimidate sa'yo.
oo. Tas to
Ang
think
sabi
pa
niya,
parang actually I after
pawok.
nun parang oo, pa-woke na parang I kind of forgot what the exact line was or what the exact comment was. Pero
Mm-hmm.
after that parang I deleted the post din kasi parang baka there were more people coming. So parang kung ano yung pinost ko, I just deleted it na lang. Pero I didn't really engage with that person anymore that much na parang
Mm-mm.
parang na-off din kasi ako. Eh, nakaka-off din kasi pag nalaman mo na parang yung mga people that you are in contact with or ano pala, or with do not agree with the same beliefs that you believe in,
Mm-hmm.
'di ba?
And are rigid with their
Mm.
beliefs, and
Mm.
refuse to consider
Mm.
other possible truths.
Mm.
Parang immediate just for them to question other people. Ay nako, kakapagod talaga yung mga ganun. Yes, I have
True.
experiences of that. Ako din. But I guess not to the extent of, being intimidated by somebody.
Mm.
Siguro, naka-experience na ako na may relative, like an elder member of the family
Mm.
commenting on a post. And, it's my timeline. And you entered my timeline. It's my
Mm.
space. So, mga ganong bagay I can ignore. But there are some cases naman na hindi ko talaga kaya. It varies, no? So your response of deleting your post to make sure that you don't invite any more criticism. I think I've also done that. It's also a valid response. I've also retaliated. It's also a valid response, except if you curse and use personal
Mm.
attacks, then it becomes invalid. Na madalas gamitin ng mga taga-kabila. So, yung mga taga-kabila po na nanonood, alam niyo na po na invalid po ang response po na gano'n. Hindi po yun tama at hindi po yun makatao. Yun lang gusto ko idagdag. Dami ko sinabi.
Mm.
So yes, I've encountered so many, partly because like we mentioned earlier, we primarily navigate the world in this online space. So where else can we signal our beliefs
Mm-mm.
and try to convince the people that are important to us, but through online. So
Mm-mm.
it makes sense. But I've also encountered so many shocking instances of somebody disagreeing with me. Also because I have a very particularly strong opinion
Mm-mm.
about particular
Mm-mm.
social topics, and I voice out my opinions about them very strongly as well.
Mm-mm.
So natural din na makapag-attract ng strong
Mm-mm.
disagreements because of that. So I've been guilty of segmenting or separating my mutuals, so my friends and
Mm-mm.
my family, based on the degree by which I agree with them or I agree with their posts. And there's a good side and a bad side to that. Parang kapag naka-segregate sila and there are tiers to how much I
Mm-mm.
agree with, disagree with them, I can also tailor my response accordingly. So, for
Mm-mm.
example, I can ask myself, is this person, you know, do they seem capable of having a dignified conversation about our political differences? If not,
Mm-mm.
then disengage. Is this person, borderline harassing my friends who agree with me on my timeline, invading my personal space? Then I'd have to, for
Mm-mm.
the protection of my friends and my other mutuals, respond. So nagawa ko na lahat. I've ignored comments, I've blocked comments, I've hidden comments, I've retaliated with information, I've retaliated with anger, all of it, 'di ba? So it really varies on the context.
Mm-mm.
Ang dami kong sinabi. So I'm gonna pause there. You can further facilitate.
Yeah, I agree. Parang it depends then on how it is being said and how it was
Mm-hmm.
delivered by the person. It is also important to have a discourse with them. It's important
Mm-hmm.
then sometimes to talk about it instead of
Mm-hmm.
just
Exactly. I
stop
agree.
engaging. So parang for me, sometimes it's also hard to have a discourse with them. Yeah, minsan ang sakit sa ulo, pero sometimes we need to do it as well. Baka kaya din naman silang
Mm-mm.
ma-convince or baka kasi syempre if we continue this, parang mas lalong magko-continue din yung divide.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we need to admit din naman na there's a divide going on.
Very
Like how,
strong
yeah, it's a
political
very
divide.
strong divide. People are labeled into either one side or another, and you can't be in between. Parang there's no more
Mm-hmm.
in between right now. And parang it's also hard na parang sometimes it's hard to engage with these kind of people, lalo na if some of them are really close-minded.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. I've experienced that then,
Mm-mm.
close-minded individuals, yeah, very rigid and
Mm-mm.
uncompromising with their ideals. It's also, but I like the tone of this conversation because it's
Mm-mm.
very compromising. So
Mm-mm.
it's willing to consider contexts and the fact that, for example, ako, I live in Nueva Vizcaya. I mean,
Mm-mm.
I come from Nueva Vizcaya. I'm currently based here until, the pandemic blows over, because wala masyadong cases dito. Pero primarily, Ilocano kasi kami. At
Mm-mm.
Ilocano si Marcos. So lumaki
Yeah.
talaga ako na napapalibutan ng mga tao na kinalakihan talaga nila na si Marcos ang pinakamahusay nating naging pangulo sa
Mm-mm.
Pilipinas. And, the data and our history will clearly say otherwise. I mean, we're
Mm-mm.
still paying for the millions of pesos of debt that
Yeah.
Imelda and her cronies have caused. Diba? But it's so hard to question that when in my environment we are dealing with that kind of culture considers Marcos as a part of the family, and
Mm-mm.
therefore we cannot call Marcos out because as a member of the family you have to forgive.
Yeah.
Parang may ganong kind of culture, and that's hard to combat. So the enemy is not so much your family member who refuses to listen to your opinion, but the culture that they come from. Diba? May
Mm-mm.
context na ganun eh. And
Yeah.
how do you fight that culture na hanggang
Mm-mm.
ngayon, buhay na buhay at pinapalaganap ng mga iba-ibang systems. Like we have systems of disinformation
Mm-mm.
through state-sponsored bots and what do we call them? Trolls, di
Trolls.
ba? They're state sponsored. So how do we fight that? That's also a kind of culture. And
Mm-mm.
what else? Our education system, it's flawed, it's incomplete. We still
Yeah.
have lots of dep ed materials that go out there unchecked.
Mm-mm.
So 'di ba, incomplete
Yeah.
yung
Ang daming
information on
mga
what really happened during the Marcos era. So, ang hirap nila kausapin dahil hindi lang sila yung kalaban. Kalaban din
mm,
natin yung mga konteksto na pinanggagalingan nila.
mm.
So, how do we approach? Kasi ako din, di ko rin alam kung paano siya sagutin. No? Pero magandang tinatanong natin siya lagi.
Yeah. So how do we address these kinds of situations, and how do we
Mhm.
have a healthy discourse with them without needing to burn the bridges naman? Kasi sometimes, 'di ba, we needed really to unfriend people. Actually, I've done that. Ikaw, have you done that,
Mhm.
Miss Bina?
Oh boy. Yes.
Yeah. Not just friends, sometimes family members na. Kasi I have
Mhm.
two Facebook accounts. One is yung where I'm most active at. The other is like my childhood account wherein I have a lot of kajejehan doon. Nandun lahat ng relatives ko na I don't agree with. And
Mhm.
sa active account ko, I don't have them anymore. Or it's not naman that I parang nag-stop na talaga yung communication, because I mean, there's still family, pero is that in terms of how we deal with each other in social media, um I prefer to be disconnected to them.
Yeah, I
Mm-mm,
get that. I can get by that.
mm-mm,
And I like that you brought up the fact that you have two accounts, no? Kasi
mm-mm.
meron ka ibang Finsta.
What's
Um,
Finsta?
Apparently, ako, I don't have one, but I just noticed that it's a trend. Parang you have a main Instagram account through which you follow family members, you follow your friends,
Oh.
and then you have a fake Insta. Tama ba? I'm not sure if I got that backwards. Basta one account is, like you said, parang ito yung
Mm-mm,
people pleaser account. And then I have an account that is tailored to my personal, my preferences and
mm-mm.
just the idea of this is my safe space online.
Yeah.
So therefore, the people that I disagree with or the people that I don't want to encounter, I keep them away from that safe space.
Mm-mm,
So, ganon. When I was still a teacher in JASMS, gumawa ko ng dalawang Twitter account. Yung isa, Sabrina Basilio, para yun yung i-follow ng students.
mm-mm,
And then yung isa is named something else para hindi siya mahanap. And so I can safely tweet, rants that are very
mm-mm,
political, that are very strongly worded, na baka might color me as something
mm-mm.
that students won't perceive as
Yeah.
calm, conciliated, and a good authority figure. So may ganon.
Mm-mm,
Parang in a bad way, parang NSFW account and then a safe for work account. Parang ganon.
mm-mm,
Um, so parang I want to view this space, this cyberspace with both good things and bad things happening
mm-mm,
as a two-pronged, you know, um, thing. So, may dalawang narrative na lumalabas. The
mm-mm,
narrative that we need to cater and cultivate safe spaces for ourselves bilang, yun nga, systems of disinformation, and we are
mm-mm,
overloaded with so much bad news and
mm-mm,
bad people, trolls. We live in that attention economy that's trying so hard to cultivate fear in us
mm-mm,
and consumerist lifestyles as well. So just purchase, purchase, purchase without thinking about the ethical implications of your purchases. The algorithms of our social media platforms also manipulate us to continue in that lifestyle.
mm-mm,
So mahalaga yung safe space. And if your idea of a safe space is unfriending these people, not engaging with them, that's not a bad thing. It's an important part of the conversation.
mm-mm,
The other narrative to that is, of course, speaking truth to power and
mm-mm,
not standing idly by while somebody continually oppresses somebody else
mm-mm.
or doesn't check their privilege, kumbaga. So, ang hirap hanapin ng balance na yun
Yeah.
between those two narratives. But we have to acknowledge that they both are equally important within
Mm-mm,
one person. So, yung checking in on your friends every now and then, it should apply both to when they're ready to speak and when they choose to withdraw
mm-mm,
momentarily and just self-care. Mamaya na lang yan. I can choose
mm-mm,
my battles, kumbaga. So that's my take on that. Yung consider these two narratives living in a person that
mm-mm.
both are valid. But are there some cases though na parang ikaw merong non-negotiable pa na when it comes to, for example, sexual harassment or when it comes to racism, is there an instance where no, you have to say something? Or ganun din ba for you?
Siguro ako as a person, parang I try my best not to burn bridges with people. If
Very noble.
pag
Mm-hmm.
you start talking, preaching to me about what you believe and na parang
Mm.
it's already compromising my safe space, then I really have no choice but to let you go in my account. Or ako, I try my best to keep everyone. I try my best to keep my family and my friends in my account, in my social
Yeah.
medias. Kasi, I mean, I'd like to be friends with these people, pero if you continue to be like this, I have no choice but to let you go.
Pero maganda yung, the fact that you at least have a choice and you
Mm,
have a say as to which people get to remain in your
yeah.
circle.
Mm-mm.
'Di ba? Kasi, I don't know, I feel like there are some people out there who don't. Like, di yung kunyari kung Ilocano ka, tapos yung buong pamilya mo na taga Ilocos ay pro Marcos at ikaw
Mm-mm.
talagang alam mo na hindi talaga, mali talaga yun.
Mm-mm.
Or pro Marcos loyalists and Marcos apologists like si Miriam Defensor Santiago. 'Di ba? She is an icon and
Mm-mm.
she was she's a brilliant leader, but she's also responsible for Bongbong Marcos being
Yeah.
back in power. So we can't overlook that. So ngayon,
Mm-mm.
kung meron kang opinion na ganun, it's very possible that you can be ostracized from the family. Or what if
Mm-mm.
it's a religion? 'Di ba? Kasi may mga
Yeah.
religion talaga dyan na, 'di ba, they don't provide space for you to think for yourself and to make
Yeah.
your own political choices. And kung pumili ka ng hindi nila in-endorse, edi ititiwalag ka, 'di ba? May mga ganun eh. So,
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
may mga tao talaga na wala silang choice. Na kahit na sa loob-loob nila, alam nilang mali, wala silang magawa. So, doon ako parang, kaya ako merong hesitance sa pag-retaliate kapag may nagko-comment or um, ano ba? Kapag, basta, I just don't want that hostile energy. Like you said, you try your best not to burn
Mm-mm.
bridges. Ako, I try my best not to be affected by the hostility of others. So
Mm-mm.
even if it's a space na nag-aaway na yung mga tao, and I wanna enter in the conversation and just, mag-ambag ng something. Like, hey, I know
Mm-mm.
this information. It might contextualize what you're saying. I try my best not to be emotional about it. 'Di ba? Pero ang hirap din kasi maging objective most of the time, especially if the issue is personal to you.
Mm-mm.
So, yun. Although I'm thinking now, kasi meron ng kasabihan ngayon na, ano yun, at this point in time, it's not, wait lang, I'm trying to gather my thoughts. Don't argue about, ano yung statement? Grabe, 23 pa lang ako, wala na akong
Okay
maalala.
lang.
Ganito po yung nangyayari sa mga freelancer, ano? Oh my God, ang tagal, Sabrina Basilio. Basta the idea is that it will come to me eventually, but the idea is that you cannot cut ties because of your political beliefs,
Mm-mm.
or your political differences rather. Pero ang counter statement dun sa ganong
Mm-mm.
pag-iisip ay, if it comes to a point where you're willing to continue believing in something that steps on the rights of other people, that
Mm-mm.
causes, that continues, that espouses the violence that's committed against them, that's no longer just a political belief.
Mm-mm.
That's a moral compass. I'm not
Mm-mm.
willing to overlook that anymore. Ganon.
Mm.
But at the same time, di ba yun nga, systems of disinformation culture, yun
Yeah.
yung kalaban kasi.
Mm-mm.
So, ang dami-dami kong dinaanan sa utak ko, yun lang yung nasabi ko.
Pero yun din,
But
napapaisip
yeah.
din ako na parang sometimes it's hard din kasi parang it's hard din kasi mapapaisip ka din na parang am I willing to have these people in my circle, people na acceptable for them, that
Mhm.
is okay with extrajudicial killings? Is it
Yeah,
okay
exactly.
for me to have people in my circle na it is okay for them to have someone that is stepping on people's human rights? Is it
Mhm.
okay for me to have people that is okay with a leader who is a misogynist, 'di ba? Parang yun din eh. Mm.
That's exactly what I was trying to say, but you articulated
Yes.
it much better. So thank you. But yes, I have the exact same
Mm.
questions. Diba, up to what point am I willing to
Yeah.
engage and in dialogue with these
Mm.
kinds of people who, up to now, seeing the
Mm.
effects of electing a misogynistic, fascist, diba? That's what he is, diba?
Yeah.
He's a tyrant, and he's allowed for all these other misogynistic cultures to go unchecked
Mm,
and uncorrected, and
mm,
therefore nagworsen yung violence against women, against transgender folk, against
mm,
LGBTQ community, just the IPs, yung mga the marginalized.
mm,
Essentially, they're further pushed back into the margins because of
mm,
the ideals that he represents and he enables.
mm,
So it's so difficult to overlook it and say, can I, at this point, hanggang ngayon, naniniwala ka pa rin sa kanya. Parang may
mm,
mali
mm,
na, di ba? Parang, did you ever think na, kung ngayon, sinusuportahan mo pa rin yung Pangulo, na alam mo na hanggang ngayon yung pandemya, hanggang ngayon yung bakuna, wala pa rin
mm,
dahil sa kanyang irresponsibility, um, okay ka pa rin doon? At kung
yeah.
okay ka pa rin, tao ka ba? Parang ganun. Have you
Mm,
said that?
yeah.
Because I have multiple times. And I've been guilty of actually messaging like a group chat of mine, like high school friends, because I saw somebody from my high school post something like, kawawa naman yung Pangulo, pagod na siya. Wag na natin siyang awayin kasi
Mm,
ginagawa niya yung trabaho niya, ganon.
mm,
Ano bang ambag ng pagka-criticize niyo sa government? Diba? Yun yung lagi
mm,
nila. Yun yung script nila eh. So, sa galit ko, naghahanap ako ng sasalo ng galit ko. Tapos, nag-send ako sa group chat na, wag niyo itong sasabihin pag sinabi niyo to, i-unfriend ko na kayo. As in, ginanon ko sila,
mm,
mga ano yon April. Because, like, pandemic, you lost everything. So, may grief. So,
mm,
parang dumaan ako sa stages of grief. And, in my anger, I messaged group chats and said, if I ever catch you saying anything remotely like this, then I'm not willing to accept you into my life. May ganun akong phase in my
mm,
life, and then I realized later on that that's not actually very productive.
mm,
um so how do we curate the spaces for productive dialogue about our differences and,
mm,
I don't know, the cultures and the reasons behind those beliefs still persisting despite very clear evidence on what that kind of belief entails for our
mm,
future. Parang pati climate change, mga hayop nadadamay sila sa kabobohan ng mga tao. Kawawa naman sila.
mm,
Bushfires and what else? Flash floods and yeah. When I was a kid, I used to, every time there would be a strong typhoon, I would just pray for the stray animals like the dogs and the cats. As in, sabi ko, Lord, protektahan niyo po yung mga hayop. Bahala na po kayo sa mga tao, kayo na lang po yung mag-decide kung worthy po silang mailigtas at, mabigyan ng pangalawang pagkakataon, kayo na po bahala. Basta yung mga hayop po, wala po silang kasalanan. Hanggang ngayon,
mm,
medyo ganun pa rin yung dinadasal ko. Na parang bahala na yung mga tao na to kasi meron kayong rational thinking
mm.
tapos hindi nyo siya ginagamit.
Mm.
Nakaka-stress, mami. Ate,
True.
mag-isip kayo. Parang ganun. Mga hayop, wala silang kinalaman sa kapitalismo. Gusto lang nilang mag-survive. Wala silang
Mm.
pakialam kung maganda yung damit nila. Sobrang na-stress ako.
How do we deal with yung mga relatives or adults reprimanding or silencing the young adults or young people for speaking up or having different views than them?
I think it also depends on context again.
Mm,
That's my cheat answer and blanket answer to everything. No, it always has to be contextualized.
mm,
So, when it comes to political beliefs, I honestly don't know how to provide an answer. Again, it depends on context and it depends on how willing are these people to converse. So ako, yung mga Ilocano na pro
mm,
Marcos at pro current administration, wala akong takot sa kanila dahil nakatira ako sa isang household na hindi ganun ang paniniwala at tatanggapin ako ano man ang paniniwala ko.
mm.
We can't say the same for everybody. So, yun. Again, my answer, zigzag. Where is it going? Nobody knows, but I hope it helped somebody out there.
Yeah, I agree.
Political din kasi yun in a way,
Mm-mm.
right? Everything is already political, but
Yeah.
I guess in a sense, when it comes to like our administration, when it comes to LGUs, how to distribute vaccines, it's also immediately political. So maganda nga yung analogy na yun. Um, I'm still also trying to figure out how to combat older people who retaliate with their outdated notions of living
Mm-mm.
and outdated beliefs. Ang ginagawa ko na lang minsan, honestly, nagdadasal na lang ako for patience. Tapos sinasabi ko, okay lang, in a few years, wala na sila sa mundong to. Kami na yung magpapatakbo. At ano, alam mo yon, parang kami na ang magiging in charge sa free market.
Mm-mm.
Kami na ang magiging in charge sa education system. At pag nawala na itong matatandang to at yung mga matatandang paniniwala nila, mas may espasyo na tayo para buksan yung dialogue. Kaso, ayoko din, dangerous din yung ganong paniniwala kasi parang paghihintay lang siya.
Oo.
And to some degree, someone might even accuse you of being passive.
Mm-mm.
So, I don't know, take small actions, choose your battles. What about you?
Actually, I agree with what you said. It is, yeah, in a few years nga. So, which is why it is important. This is a call for everyone, especially the youth, to please register to vote next year. Please do. The
Yes, actually
segue
open ang
natin.
registration
Mm-mm.
for
Yeah.
voting. Yeah,
Actually, I
so
haven't registered yet, but I will this term break.
mhm. For your next podcast episode, parang just show your voter's
Yeah.
ID. Okay, I've registered, okay? So hindi ako hipokrito. Kayo din, parang ganun. If you want
Yeah.
me to continue producing episodes, then show me your voter's ID. Kanya,
Yeah.
wow. Conditional. But yeah. Maganda yung may nakita
Mm-mm.
kong tweet dati na um, New Zealand and Sweden or something.
Mm-mm.
Basta Vietnam.
Mm-mm.
Kasi they imposed early lockdowns eh. So
Yeah.
they never had cases over like 5 or something. I could be wrong. I could be wrong and it's okay. Just correct me in the comment section or something. Pero napaka-konti ng cases nila.
Mm-mm.
So may nagsabi na ang swerte talaga ng Vietnam and New Zealand. They can resume normal life and somebody said they're not lucky. They're reaping the benefits of hard work, which
Mm-mm.
is engaging their youth to register to vote
Yeah.
early and educating them on how
Mm-mm.
to decide which politicians to elect in
Yeah.
your local government units and
Mm-mm.
for the national elections as well. And
Mm-mm.
alam mo yun, that's also like cringe towards the United States of America because they're a first world country, so they should have no excuse,
Mm-mm.
for what happened in the previous presidential
Mm-mm.
elections. I'm just hoping that, Filipinos don't fall under the same traps of waiting at the last minute, waiting until somebody as strong and as, tyrannous as our current
Mm-mm.
administration before they do something about it.
Mm-mm.
Kasi admittedly, ako din nung 16, 17 ako, I wasn't very politically aware. It
Mm-mm.
took me Ninoy Aquino and the Hacienda Luisita massacre and hearing all these anecdotes before I decided to be, a responsible citizen.
Mm-mm.
So don't wait for something bad to happen before you take action.
Mm-mm.
Parang don't always, it's the same, it falls under the same analogy as don't just wait for charity because charity is based on a whim and there are systems that necessitate charity.
Mm-mm.
What we want is justice, and justice can only be achieved when we elect the right people
Yeah.
and oust the bad people.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, the one actually the one you mentioned about New Zealand, yun din eh, na
Mm,
parang it's them choosing their um it's them choosing better politicians. It's them making better choices. And that is why they have better recovery system or better system when it comes to addressing the pandemic. And
mm-hmm,
tayo, we're reaping the repercussions of our actions for electing these officials. So
mm-hmm,
it's also kind of our fault why we're still here, I think.
Ganun eh. Oo, totoo yun.
So parang ang hirap din for people to like, okay, continuous na nagreklamo, pero have you done anything to solve
Mhm.
this thing? Have you done your part in voting, in registering? And if you didn't, ano ba? Pang hinihintay mo.
Tsaka apart from that inaction, our problem is also the false dichotomies, like we mentioned a
Yeah.
while back, yung false na binary
Mm-mm.
way of thinking and segmenting the information that we see. So
Yeah.
just for example, si Leni Robredo, we label her as Dilawan because we
Yeah.
associate her with that party. But even if she stands for something larger than that political
Mm-mm.
party, we immediately see her as, if you're part of the other side, then you see
Mm-mm.
her as opposition. And if you're part of that political party, then you see
Mm-mm.
everybody else as opposition as well.
Mm-mm.
Instead of considering that there are multiple other options.
Mm-mm.
How do we combat that, diba? Nakakatulong makakita ng mga young politicians na gets mo na hindi mo sila mabigyan ng color association like
Yeah.
Vico Soto.
Actually,
Anong
Vico
kulay
was
niya?
just awarded today. I think I just saw it in Instagram. He was awarded by the Biden administration or of one of the 12 awardees of, I think, anti-corruption. And
Wow, good
yeah,
job.
yeah, he just
Well
got
deserved.
awarded with that. Let me check if I got it right. Yeah, one of the anti-corruption champions around the world.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
Pero tama rin kasi he's very vocal about,
yeah,
rejecting cultures like utang na loob kasi
mm,
kalaban din natin yung kultura na yun
yeah,
eh. I think that's also why it's hard for some people to contest when their older relatives tell them to shut up and,
mm,
mag-aral na lang. Kasi meron silang utang na loob na, ito yung nagpapakain sa akin eh.
mm.
So, look at us, circling back to the question after all of the things that were derailed.
Bumalik din tayo sa question na
Oh,
pinagalingan natin.
we are capable of being coherent and cohesive.
To move on from that, from the
Mhm.
unanswered question, yeah. So in this kind of situation wherein it's a very divisive society, and there's a lot of labels. If you go with this side, if you go with that side, can agreeing to disagree still work in this kind of environment?
That's a very good question. Again, difficult to answer in one sitting.
Mm-mm,
Again, depends on context and nuance.
mm-mm,
There are some cases that cannot sit on agree to disagree, especially with regards to cases that have been uncorrected for so long, like racism.
mm-mm,
Those are cases that we cannot agree to disagree anymore. Pwede tayo mag-agree to disagree on who is the right representative for Black women empowerment.
mm-mm,
Pwede tayo mag-agree to disagree on that kasi ang daming pwede.
mm-mm,
And in the first place, we can even question the fact that why does there have to be only one representative?
mm-mm,
But we cannot agree to disagree on things like racism is bad because it is bad because it's the
mm-mm,
reason why us Asians still don't have proper representation in media.
mm-mm,
That's one simple problem compared to the many other problems that we have, like Black people cannot have access to proper healthcare. They're more prone to diabetes. They're more prone to all these other comorbidities. That is the reason why the largest population of people dying in the United States are Black and Latinos, or Latinas, or Latinx. Cases like that, we cannot agree to disagree on it anymore. Misogyny, I also cannot agree to disagree with somebody regarding misogyny or any form of bigotry or any form of discrimination towards someone just because of their skin color or their age or something, and by effect, or by extension, limiting their resources and limiting their access to information and their basic human rights, diba? Parang yun, we cannot agree to disagree on that. Pero who is the right person to lobby for this? Who is the right person to speak for this certain community? Ganun yung mga bagay na mahirap pag-usapan. Kasi for example, let's use the less political, less heated example.
Mm-mm.
Frozen 2. Um, have you seen it?
Yeah, I did. Mm-mm.
Yeah. 'Di ba meron silang, what is that culture that they borrowed from? Na Norwegian or
Yeah. Mm-mm.
Norway? What is it called? My gosh, Sami?
I think
Sami culture ba
so.
sila? Yun, parang who is the right person
Mm-mm.
to speak for these people?
Yeah.
If we get, for example, a white person to voice the lead, the tribe
Mm-mm.
leader, edi mali yun. If we get white directors to direct the story about their culture, edi mali yun. 'Di ba? But we also have to understand that Hollywood
Mm-mm.
or our current modes of media production
Mm-mm.
are accessible primarily to white people. So, kumbaga, naging gateway ang itong mga puti na director na ito, sila ang nagbukas ng pintuan para sa mga iba-ibang kultura ng iba-ibang kulay na pumasok sa loob ng sa likod ng backstage. So, naghirap pa ako mag-Filipino, pwede ko naman sabing backstage, di ba? So yun, parang we cannot criticize the lack, I guess. I mean, we should criticize the lack of diversity in the dominant media cultures that we have, but we also have to understand that it has to start somewhere.
Yeah.
So may space yata for agreeing to disagree in terms of that.
Yeah, so the last question ng will revolve around like also people in the middle, staying in the middle, people who are not choosing to take sides, or even if they choose to take sides, parang choose not to say anything.
There are various ways for you to choose a side or
Yeah.
to have political views and enact those political views. No, it doesn't have to be performing it online or
Mm-mm.
signaling it across your social media
Yeah.
channels. There is a important
Mm-mm.
kind of participation
Mm-mm.
that involves phoning your friend and listening to your friend, just talk about their experiences of being ostracized from the family because they open up something delicate. There is an equal important part of the conversation that involves you silently donating,
Mm-mm.
volunteering
Mm-mm.
in various, non-government organizations, sharing resources to people who might need them. That's
Yeah.
important. You don't have to necessarily speak online because there are many ways for you to
Mm-mm.
help and there are many ways for you to take action that will not endanger your life or
Mm-mm.
endanger, I guess, for public figures, like for example, you're a YouTuber. So for, diba, in a way,
Mm-mm.
you're kind of a public figure. Um, there is a way for you to help without endangering your
Mm-mm.
viewership or endangering your family because your name is here, diba?
Yeah.
And that involves silent action. That takes a lot of courage as
Mm-mm.
well and a lot of patience because the things that we might be doing, we won't see their effects probably in our lifetime. And we just have to keep moving in that hope that it's helping somebody. And even if that somebody cannot communicate to me their gratitude, at
Mm-mm.
least sending that energy out in the universe, that
Mm-mm.
desire to help, might spur other helpful energies out there. Kasi ako naniniwala ako sa mga ganun eh,
Mm-mm.
yung energy. Kahit hindi ka naniniwala sa Diyos o hindi mo alam kung sino dinadasalan mo, yung paraan mo ng pagsasalita at yung paraan ng pagkilos mo, meron siyang nadadagdag na meron siyang ambag sa kung paano
Mm-mm.
tumakbo yung universe. And if we keep moving with the intention of helping somebody, even if it's not speaking up online, even if it's not raising awareness the way that other people do, there is still relevance to it because it comes from wanting the greater good, diba?
Mm-mm.
So I think, I don't know, that's not something that people often talk about,
Yeah.
that you can silently donate and it's equally
Yeah.
valid as raising arms online.
Yeah. Mm-mm. Actually, I agree din. Kasi parang, actually, just by doing your part of voting, registering,
Yeah,
or parang
yeah,
just
important.
participating in the act
Mm-hmm.
of choosing your leaders, it
Mm-hmm.
also it already says a lot.
If you're a person of influence also, there is a slight expectation for you to at least encourage people to
Mm-mm.
participate the way that you are participating. You
Yeah.
know, like influencers. Sana yung mga influencers natin na nabibigyan ng platform at yung yumayaman at
Mm-mm.
nabibigyan ng opportunities ay mga influencers talaga na may pakialam sa welfare
Yeah.
ng bansa, welfare
Mm-mm.
ng mga hayop, welfare ng environment, ganyan. So, so in that extent, then we cannot also take away the value of
Mm-mm.
speaking up and raising awareness.
Yeah. Actually, yun din yung question ko. Kasi 'di ba, I think it's also important din kasi for like influencers, especially
Mm-mm.
those who can influence people to do the act of registering or
Mm-mm.
voting, even just that small act of it. Parang it it gives out it gives a lot. It gives a lot of contribution. Pero parang there are some din that choose not to be involved.
Mm-hmm.
So parang um siguro yun din for people with influence. Is it all right for them to just sit on the fence?
Sa akin, walang kwenta yung influence mo kung di mo siya ginagamit para sa
Mm-mm.
pagpapalaganap ng tama at
Mm-mm.
pagpapalaganap ng totoo.
Mm-mm.
Or kahit man lang, at the very least, encouraging people to be discerning.
Yeah.
Gaya ng si Angel Locsin naman, she hasn't voiced out anything against the administration, but we know that she's against, the shutdown of
Yeah.
ABS-CBN. She's against, the removal of jobs for
Mm-mm.
these people, and she's against, just stepping down on other people's human rights. And it's
Yeah.
already very clear that when she voices this out, the message is clear for us ordinary citizens that we have to take a stand against these acts.
Yeah.
So, hindi naman natin sila hinihiling na pumili ng kandidato, 'di ba? That's
Oo.
not what we're demanding. We're just demanding that they acknowledge that there is something wrong.
Yeah.
And if they are capable of making that acknowledgement, they are capable of changing the minds of others who,
Mm-mm.
are just unquestioningly living their privileged middle class lives.
Mm-mm.
Mag-isip kayo kung on the fence pa rin kayo hanggang ngayon.
To wrap things up, halos 1 hour tayo. OMG. Wow.
Wow.
Oo.
Juicy.
How can we deal with people or our close peers, acquaintances, or family with opposing political and moral views?
I think the most important step is to consider where are you coming from when you decide to approach them. Are you coming from a space of anger and disappointment? Are you
Mm-mm.
coming from a space of wanting to alienate them? Are you coming from a desire to include them more in your
Mm-mm.
life and therefore make them understand where you are coming from?
Mm-mm.
Are you coming from a space of wanting to understand why they said that or why they think this way? Because if you are aware of where you are coming from, then you can properly tailor what you're going to say, consider the effects of what you'll say, if it is productive, if it's adding to the conversation, or if it's taking away something from the conversation. So, once we apply that kind of discernment, I think, mas nagiging makabuluhan yung pag-participate sa mga ganitong klase ng
Mm-mm.
diskusyon. Mas nagkakaroon ng dignidad yung pag-uusap ninyo. Mas lumalaki yung pagkakataon na makinig sila sa'yo. Dahil mararamdaman nila na yung pinanggagalingan mo ay hindi pagmamaliit sa kung paano sila mag-isip, kundi
Mm-mm.
karanasan na makasama sila at magkaisa kayo.
Mm-mm.
Kahit na initially hindi kayo magkasundo, at least the desire is there, and at least a possible relationship or a possible critical thinking will be spurred in their minds. That is my answer. I know it's not a direct answer, but there are really no direct answers to these kinds of things, I
Mm-mm.
think.
Ako, for me, I think that if we encounter people that we don't agree with their opinions or their views are opposing to ours, we should
Mm-hmm.
not alienate them,
Yeah.
or parang we let us not contribute to the divisive
The
culture.
noise, yes.
Oo. Masyado nang divided ang society natin for us to contribute even more. I
Mm-hmm.
do think it is important for us to continue engaging, have
Mm-hmm.
that conversation, know where they're coming from, and then hear them out. Kasi baka they have a, baka um, they have, they're coming from somewhere, or they come from a place of disinformation, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe you can provide some information for them, kasi there are people naman na if you provide them with enough information, you can provide them clarity, and they
Yeah.
might be able to think clearly. There are some that are able to think clearly if presented with information. And I think na it is important then to vote.
Yeah.
Register and vote. Yun talaga yung ano dito. Yun talaga yung main
That's the
wrap up.
agenda.
Wrap up slogan. Register and vote. Yeah.
Register to vote.
Mm-mm.
Be a responsible member of your community.
Mm-mm. And there we have it. That's the end of this first episode this season 2. Oh my gosh. Finally. And we're on the start of more braver discussions. And thank
Hmm.
you, Miss Bina, for for accepting the invitation first and foremost. Kasi actually when I sent you an invitation, I was like kinakabahan kasi sabi ko, OMG, hindi ako sure.
No, but I'm so
Yeah.
thankful that you invited me, and I'm very honored to be a part of this
Mm-mm.
project. And I'm excited for the future episodes. I mean, just
Mm-mm.
send links and share the pub mats, and we will give a shout out on our podcast as well. Everything just to support
Mm-mm.
each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, before we end, Miss Bina, would you like to promote anything, social
Mm.
medias or the 20 something podcast?
Oh yeah, well I've mentioned this four times already, but we also have a podcast called 20 Somethings Podcast. We are unfiltered there, so if you are the
Mm-mm.
type to cringe at heavily political material and pop culture talked about in a very political lens, then it might not be
Mm-mm.
the podcast for you. But if it is and you enjoy us just crying about our existential crisis as 20 something year old creatives in the Philippines, then you are very much welcome to join us and submit your questions through Instagram and Twitter at 20 somethings PH. That's 20 the number somethings PH. I don't have anything else to promote, but please continue supporting Jacob's podcast. He's a wonderful host and a wonderful talkative person. So, ayan. Salamat sa
Mm-mm.
pag-imbita.
Yan. And just an announcement, if you are listening to this on YouTube, we're already on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So please do
Yay!
check it out. The links are below. It's somewhere there. I don't know where, but it's just somewhere there. And check out our episodes next week. And yung episodes pa yan ng Usap ng Lockdown is still available on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Jacob Maquiling. Yan, guys. Thank you, guys. See you next week here at Ganito Kasi Yan.
Thank you.